In this video, I'll be delving into the twisted mind of the famous horror artist, Junji Ito. I'll be recreating one of his artworks from black and white into colour, and I'll also be reading 3 creepypasta stories that will mess with your mind. This video was brought to you by my patrons, and if you'd like to support my channel, you can simply do so by subscribing, dropping a comment, giving the video a thumbs up, and maybe checking out my Patreon page. But let's jump into the first story. Enjoy. Life Within. My husband and I loved each other very much, but just as most couples, we would get into arguments. Our biggest argument always revolved around a single disagreement. Children. I wanted children, he did not. As the years passed, I had hoped he would eventually come around and warm up to the idea of having children, but he remained stubborn and wouldn't change his mind. I reminded him that if we waited too much longer, we'd never be able to conceive a child of our own, but he didn't seem to care. I even suggested adoption and fostering children, but he wouldn't hear it. You're not fit to be a mother. His cruel words burned into my memory. I loved him. Why would he say such a thing? I wanted to carry a baby. I wanted to have life inside of me, a little piece of him inside of me. I love my husband, but he didn't have the right to keep me from doing this. No one can stop me. I threw out my birth control pills, and I sabotaged his condoms as I prepared to seduce my husband into a frenzy of lovemaking and passion. My husband, who knew I was desperate for the chance to have life inside of me, discovered my plan and rejected my advances. My own husband said I was crazy, that I was becoming obsessed and losing my mind. I loved him so much. How could he say such a horrid thing to me? I'm his loving wife. That night I cried. I never cried so hard in all my life. He didn't have the right to do this. I would have the life I so craved. It took me a week, but I had my next plan ready. This plan was foolproof. There would be nothing he could do about it. This time, he wouldn't stop me. After he returned home from work, I offered him a beer, after slipping a dose of crushed sleeping pills into the drink. He of course didn't taste any of the medicine, as he greedily downed the offered beer. Within 20 minutes, he was in a deep sleep, practically unconscious. I dragged my husband into our bedroom and onto the bed. I stripped off his clothes and began kissing his body all over. "You can't take this from me," I whispered into his ear, as he remained blissfully unaware of what was about to happen to him. Hours passed as I had my way with his body. He didn't awaken from his drug-induced slumber. Not once did he feel my warm lips pressing constantly against his cool skin, enjoying every sensation I felt as I carefully finished my task. The bedsheets were soaked from my night activity, but the fluid wasn't sweat. It was blood. My husband's blood. I sat on the floor of the bedroom, my back leaning against the foot of our family bed. I ran my hands lovingly over my tight stomach, thrilled about the life I was now carrying. I wouldn't be able to enjoy the life inside of me for the full 9 months, like most women, but the few days I had with it would be the best of my life. It's no easy feat to devour an entire human being in a single night. But it was worth it. I finally have a piece of my husband inside of me. Curiosity. The detective escorted the parents through the mortuary. "I'm so very sorry for this. I have to warn you, this will be a rather large shock. You need to prepare yourselves." He led them to one of the metal drawers and pulled it open, revealing a small body wrapped in white material. "Are you ready?" he asked. Slowly and reluctantly, they nodded. When he pulled aside the sheet, the woman fell down to her knees, crying and retching. The husband lowered himself to her level and buried her face into his chest, squeezing his eyes shut in a failed attempt to remain stoic and calm for his wife. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. He cleared his throat and quietly choked out a few barely audible words. That's her. That's our girl." On the table lay a small child, around the age of 8. Her face, arms, and shoulders were half eaten, with tiny rodent bite marks scattered across her skin. Stiff white hairs littered her torn dress and matted blonde curls. On the half of her face that remained intact was a joyful, delighted smile, frozen for the rest of time. "How?" gasped the man. His wife continued to bawl into his shirt, soaking it with her tears. The detective hesitated. We pulled her out of a sewage pipe. One arm was pinned to her side, the other outstretched, and her face and shoulders, well, you can see." The man stared blankly at the detective, who slowly continued. "We're not sure what animal was responsible for this, but forensics said it might have been rabbits. We're not sure why rabbits would act this way, especially while the girl was still alive." He stopped himself from continuing. "Why did we name her Alice?" Her mother sobbed hysterically into her husband's shoulder. "We could have named her anything else. Anything in the world." As the man began to sob as well, he placed a hand on his wife's head. In his other hand, he held a tightly crumpled note with an untidy, childlike scroll that read, "I'm going to find my rabbit hole. I know you'll miss me, and I'm sorry. But don't be sad. I'm in Wonderland." Who's that? My basement has never exactly been a welcoming place. It's unfinished, there's no carpet, and the walls consist of boring exposed bricks. There's a set of old wooden stairs on one end that creaks whenever anyone uses them. Behind the stairs is a storage area that begins about 4 or 5 feet off the ground and goes maybe 15 feet further back underneath the garage. The place is a dump, as my brother never cleans it, and toys and tools and random things are sprawled out across the entire basement floor, and that's an accomplishment considering how huge it is. It's not very wide, but from one end to the other, it's at least 80 feet in length, including the storage space. However, it is not easy to see from one end to the other, since the water heater, furnace, and other appliances sit conveniently at the bottom of the stairs to make it impossible to carry large objects like the Christmas tree up and down stairs. Anyways, one night we had some friends over. By we, I mean me and my parents. They had a little girl with them, maybe 4 or 5 years old, and since my brother was elsewhere, as usual, I wound up sort of babysitting this girl while the parents chatted over desserts or something. Since the basement had so many toys, I thought it was a good idea to take her downstairs to play. Upstairs was kind of boring for a kid her age. The first thing she did when she got down there was to find a large box. We had just replaced our washing machine, so its ginormous box was just sitting in the middle of the basement floor. It was as if I had completely vanished as soon as she crawled into the box. She had entered her own little world, playing house or something. I tuned out for a while to check emails on my phone while she entertained herself, and then she caught my attention. "Who's that?" she asked. I blinked. "Who's who?" I responded, confused. "The man over there. The man in black," she responded, completely straight-faced. "There's no one there," I told her. "That's because he went upstairs," she told me. At this point, I took the girl upstairs and sat with my parents for the rest of the evening, not saying a word about what she said. 2 years later, I had some friends over in mid-February. In Wisconsin, that means if you were to go outside at night, you would be frozen solid in under 10 minutes. So me and my friends were stuck inside and went downstairs to investigate the haunted basement I told them about. The above story, in fact. There were 5 of us, including me and my cousin. I had a tape recorder to collect audio, my cousin had a digital camera, and the others were armed with flashlights, because they wanted to turn out the lights. Reluctantly. So we pulled the strings to turn off the lights, and we sat there in the pitch-black basement, but only for a few seconds. A halogen light bulb began to flicker above my head almost immediately. I reached up to find that it was halfway plugged in, but still a coincidence. I hadn't even turned on my recorder yet, so I unplugged the light and turned on my recorder and told my cousin to do the same with his camera. It was past 11 o'clock at night, so it was silent, absolutely silent. Several minutes passed. We even did the thing they do on TV, where you just ask questions to whoever or whatever. There wasn't a single response, so it turned into a bit of a joke. We started making fun of the situation and felt pretty stupid. We laughed for a while. Finally, my cousin's camera gives a low battery warning, so we decided to take the last few minutes seriously. "Okay, I'm gonna count down from 3, and then let's have it quiet again," my cousin says. 3, 2, 1. A few silent moments passed. My cousin's camera beeps and shuts off. I turn off my recorder. We go upstairs to listen to the footage, and that was that. Of course, the footage was rather uneventful. We listened to the entire tape, and for the longest time, we heard nothing but the sounds of our own voices, until the end. "Okay, I'm gonna count down from 3, and then let's have it quiet again," my cousin says. 3, 2, 1. A few silent moments passed. My cousin's camera beeps and shuts off. But then, in the half second between the camera turning off and the end of the footage, is a whisper. "Don't leave." We all stared at each other, petrified. "Who's that?" one of my friends asked. "The man in black," I told him.